When music-loving loner Kai and the star athlete Renji are paired for a school competition, their unlikely friendship blooms into something deeper. But with strict parents, jealous classmates, and their own fears standing in their way, will they fight for their love or let it slip away? The morning sun bathed the grounds of Hoshikawa Academy in a warm golden hue, illuminating the sprawling campus that blended modern architecture with traditional Japanese aesthetics. The school's grand entrance was flanked by two towering sakura trees, their delicate pink petals occasionally drifting to the ground with the soft whisper of the wind. Beyond the gates, students in crisp navy uniforms bustled along the pathways, some chatting animatedly, others rushing to avoid the looming threat of being late. The air was tinged with a mixture of freshly cut grass, the faint scent of chalk, and the distant echo of a soccer ball being kicked across the field. At the center of the campus stood the historic music hall, a wooden structure adorned with vines that had seen generations of musicians pour their souls into its instruments. To most, it was just another building, but for Kai Minace, it was the only place where he felt truly free. Kai walked through the school's main pathway, his posture rigid yet graceful, his black hair neatly combed with a few stray strands falling over his sharp eyes. Unlike the other students who laughed and whispered about their weekend plans, he moved with quiet purpose, his hands clutching the strap of his bag. The subtle rustling of sheet music inside comforted him, a reminder that he had something no one could take away. His navy blazer, buttoned up perfectly, made him look even more disciplined than he truly was, an illusion he maintained well. Beneath the facade of the perfect student, he hid his true self, a pianist whose fingers itched to dance over the ivory keys, but who kept his passion locked away like a secret. His father, a strict businessman, had never approved of music. "Focus on your studies," he would say, his voice cold and final. The mere thought of that expectation made Kai's chest feel tight, but he had long since learned how to suppress emotions. His older sister, now, was the only person who ever truly understood him. She would sneak into his room at night with chocolate and music sheets, whispering, "You don't have to give up on yourself just to please him." He cherished those moments, but they weren't enough to erase the loneliness that followed him like a shadow. Meanwhile, on the other side of the campus, Renji Sakamoto sprinted towards the school gate, his soccer cleat still slung over his shoulder, his uniform slightly disheveled as always. The morning air stung his cheeks, but he didn't care, he lived for the thrill of the rush. His warm brown eyes crinkled at the corners as he smirked, dodging students left and right, a few of them calling out in mock annoyance, "Sakamoto, you're late again." "Not yet." He shot back, leaping up the stairs two at a time just as the bell rang. Sliding into the classroom, Ms. Suzuki, their kind but exasperated homeroom teacher, gave him a tired look. "Renji, this is the third time this week." Renji flashed his most charming smile. "But I made it before the door closed, right?" The class chuckled, and Ms. Suzuki sighed. "Just take your seat." Renji slumped into his chair, one row over from Kai, and exhaled. His gaze drifted to the quiet boy beside him. Kai always had this aura of being untouchable, like a figure carved from marble, beautiful, but distant. There was something about the way he never joined in on the noise, how his fingers sometimes twitched as if longing to do something else entirely. Renji found himself intrigued. Later that day, as the final class ended, Kai quietly slipped away from the crowd. He made his way down the empty hallways, past the gym where the sounds of sneakers squeaking against polished floors echoed, until he reached the music room. The moment he stepped inside, the outside world faded away. Dust particles danced in the slanted sunlight filtering through the window, and the faint scent of old wood and sheet music filled the air. He ran his fingers along the polished surface of the grand piano before sitting down, his shoulders relaxing for the first time that day. The first note he played was soft, almost hesitant, but soon, the melody unfolded like a story, a delicate balance of sadness and longing, laced with something unspoken. His fingers moved instinctively, faster, more intense, until the emotions he had been holding back poured into the keys. It was the only language he spoke fluently. Unbeknownst to him, Renji stood outside the door, frozen in place. He had come to retrieve his forgotten soccer ball but stopped the moment he heard the first note. The melody hit him in the chest, the emotions behind it undeniably raw, almost painful. He had never been drawn to classical music, but this wasn't just music. This was someone's soul speaking. Without thinking, he stepped inside. "That's really good." Kai jerked, his hands crashing onto the wrong keys, creating an ugly discord. He spun around, his heartbeat pounding painfully against his ribs. Renji leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a small, unreadable smile on his face. "You play like you're telling a story," Renji continued. "What's it about?" Kai hesitated, his fingers tightening against his lap. "It's just music." "Yeah." Renji stepped closer, his presence warm and unintrusive. "It doesn't sound like just anything." For a moment, they simply stared at each other. The air between them buzzed with something fragile and new. Kai looked away first. "You shouldn't be here." Renji grinned. "Neither should you, I guess." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "Don't worry, your secret's safe with me." Kai didn't know why his chest felt tight again. But this time, it wasn't from anxiety. It was something else entirely. The next day, Kai tried to ignore Renji. But Renji didn't make that easy. In between classes, Renji would nudge him, comment on his posture, ask questions about music he had no real knowledge of. It was frustrating, and yet Kai didn't entirely hate it. But just as he was getting used to this strange new presence in his life, a misunderstanding shattered everything. During lunch, Kai had been about to approach Renji when he saw Mayu Tanaka, Renji's childhood friend, throw her arms around him, laughing. A strange, unfamiliar sting hit Kai's chest. He turned and walked away before Renji could notice. And for the rest of the day, he avoided Renji like the plague. Kai didn't show up at the music room the next day. Or the day after. The absence felt like a small stone lodged in his chest, barely noticeable at first, but heavy enough that he couldn't ignore it. He told himself he was being ridiculous. That what he saw, the way Mayu had thrown her arms around Renji, how Renji had laughed and ruffled her hair, meant nothing to him. And yet, every time he passed by Renji in the hallways, his stomach clenched. Every time Renji called his name, he pretended not to hear. Renji, of course, noticed immediately. At first, he thought it was just Kai being his usual distant self. But this? This was different. Before, Kai would at least glance his way before looking away. Now, he barely acknowledged his existence. Even in class, where they sat so close, Kai angled his body away from him, never meeting his gaze. It was a coldness Renji didn't understand. And worse, it annoyed him. 3 days of silence was all Renji could take. After school, he found Kai where he always was, by the vending machines near the library, the only place quiet enough for students who wanted to avoid the crowd. Kai had just bought a canned coffee, his fingers curling around the cold metal when Renji's voice cut through the stillness. "Kai." Kai stiffened. He hadn't expected to be caught off guard like this. He exhaled slowly before turning, his expression unreadable. "What do you want?" Renji scoffed, stepping closer. "That's what I should be asking you. You've been avoiding me." Kai looked away. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" Renji crossed his arms, his voice dropping into something softer, something almost hurt. "I thought we were starting to," he stopped himself, shaking his head. "Whatever. If you have a problem with me, just say it." Kai felt his grip on the can tighten. A problem? He didn't know what his problem was. He didn't understand why seeing Renji with Mayu had bothered him. Didn't understand why Renji's voice, his presence, the warmth of him standing so close right now, made it hard to breathe. Instead of answering, Kai said flatly, "I don't have time for this." He turned to leave. Renji's fingers closed around his wrist. The touch sent a shock of heat up Kai's arm, and for a moment, neither of them moved. "You're lying," Renji muttered. Kai didn't pull away immediately. But then he yanked his wrist free and walked away without looking back. Renji let him go. But this wasn't over. Later that evening, Renji sat on the rooftop of his apartment complex, kicking a stray pebble off the edge. His soccer ball sat beside him, but for once, he didn't feel like playing. Mayu plopped down beside him, her long ponytail swaying as she stretched her legs. "So, are you going to tell me what's eating you, or do I have to guess?" Renji grumbled, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's Kai. He's been acting weird." Mayu raised an eyebrow. "Weird how?" "He's avoiding me. Won't talk to me. And when he does, it's like he's trying to pretend we don't even know each other." Mayu hummed, watching Renji out of the corner of her eye. "Do you like him?" Renji almost choked. "What?" She smirked. "Come on. You talk about him more than you talk about soccer these days." Renji scowled. "That's not, I don't know. He's just interesting." Mayu sighed dramatically, patting his shoulder. "Boys are dumb. That's my conclusion." Renji nudged her with his elbow. "Gee, thanks." But later that night, her words stuck with him. Back at the Mine's household, Kai sat on his bed, staring blankly at his piano. Now, his older sister, poked her head inside. "You look miserable." Kai sighed. "I'm fine." Now walked in anyway, plopping beside him. "No, you're not. Is it school? Dad? Or, is it about a certain soccer player?" Kai's head snapped toward her. "What, how did you?" Now smirked. "You're my little brother. I notice things." Kai hesitated. Then, softly, "It doesn't make sense." Now tilted her head. "What doesn't?" "The way I feel. I don't understand why it bothers me when he—" Kai exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "I don't even know why I care." Now was silent for a moment before she reached out, ruffling his hair like she used to when they were kids. "Maybe it's not about understanding." She smiled. "Maybe you're just scared of what it means." Kai didn't answer. But the weight in his chest grew heavier. Days passed. The tension between Kai and Renji only grew, stretching thin, brittle, until it finally snapped. It happened on a rainy afternoon. Kai had stayed late in the music room, playing aimlessly, hoping the storm outside would pass. But when he finally stepped out, Renji was there. Waiting. Kai frowned. "Why are you here?" Renji shoved his hands in his pockets. "I could ask you the same thing." Kai huffed, walking past him. "I don't have time for this." Renji grabbed his arm, not harshly, but firm enough that Kai stopped. "Why do you keep running?" Renji's voice was quiet but steady. "What are you so scared of?" Kai's breath caught. The rain poured around them, the scent of wet pavement filling the air. "I'm not scared," he said, but it was a lie. Renji stepped closer, his warmth cutting through the cold drizzle. "Then look me in the eyes and tell me you don't care. That I don't matter to you." Kai's fingers curled into fists. He couldn't say it. Because it wasn't true. The silence stretched between them, tense, charged, filled with something unnamed but undeniable. Then, Renji's voice softened. "I like you, Kai." Kai's breath hitched. He looked up, startled, really looked at Renji, at the sincerity in his eyes, the way his shoulders were tense, as if bracing for rejection. For the first time in his life, Kai didn't know what to say. The sun rose over Hoshikawa Academy, casting long golden streaks across the empty corridors. The storm had passed, but for Kai, the weight in his chest remained. What have I done? He wasn't sure what had shaken him more, Renji's confession, the way their hands had fit together in the rain, or the terrifying warmth that had spread through his chest in that moment. A warmth he should not have felt. He entered the classroom quietly, shoulders tense, as if the whole room knew his secret. His usual seat by the window felt suffocating today, but before he could change his mind and leave, Renji was already there. Sitting at his desk, Renji looked the same as always, half-unbuttoned blazer, tie barely in place, messy brown hair framing his sharp, mischievous features. But today, there was a difference. Today, Renji was watching him. Their eyes met for only a second. Kai's stomach twisted. Say something, he told himself. Anything. But he couldn't. Instead, he turned away, pulled out his books, and pretended Renji wasn't there. The classroom filled with their classmates, but the space between them remained frozen. And that silence was louder than any confession. For the next several days, Kai avoided Renji. Not just in the classroom, but everywhere. He skipped lunch, walked a different route to practice, even left school the moment the bell rang, refusing to give Renji a chance to catch him alone. It wasn't that he didn't want to see him. It was that he wanted it too much. Whenever he let his guard slip, when he caught glimpses of Renji's laughter across the courtyard, or the way he ran his hand through his hair absent-mindedly during soccer practice, his chest would tighten. And the worst part? Renji noticed. By midweek, Renji had stopped trying to talk to him. He stopped waiting outside class. Stopped sending notes. Stopped calling out his name. But he never stopped looking. It wasn't until Friday afternoon that everything fell apart. Kai had lingered too long after class, waiting for most students to leave before stepping into the hallway. But as soon as he turned the corner, Renji was waiting. Kai's breath caught in his throat. Renji's arms were crossed, his bag slung over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. You've been avoiding me. Kai stiffened. I've been busy. A humorless laugh escaped Renji's lips. Right. Because you're always busy. Too busy to eat. Too busy to answer my texts. Too busy to even look at me. Kai clenched his fists. Renji, don't. No, we're doing this now, Renji cut in, stepping closer. The air between them was electric, crackling with something raw and unspoken. Because I'm done waiting. I told you how I felt, and then you. He stopped, exhaling sharply, running a hand through his hair in frustration. You ran, he said finally, his voice lower now, almost vulnerable. Kai flinched. Renji took another step forward. Was it that bad? Kai's chest tightened. That's not. Then tell me. Renji's voice was quiet, but firm. Tell me you don't feel the same way, and I'll stop. Kai's throat was dry. Renji was so close now that he could see the small scar above his left eyebrow, the one he'd gotten from a soccer accident last year. He could smell the faint scent of his cologne, mixed with something that was purely Renji. His heart was pounding. And Renji was waiting. Waiting for an answer that Kai couldn't give. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He turned and walked away. That night, Kai sat in his room, staring at the ceiling. Nao's voice broke the silence. You're thinking about him, aren't you? Kai jerked upright. What? Nao smirked from the doorway. Renji. His stomach dropped. I don't. Please. She walked in, sitting on his desk. You've been moping around all week like a heartbroken drama character. It's painful to watch. Kai looked away. I'm not heartbroken. Nao sighed, kicking her legs slightly. Then what are you so scared of? Kai's jaw tightened. Nao studied him. Do you like him? The question hung in the air like a blade. Kai opened his mouth, then shut it. Nao smiled sadly. Kai, whatever you're afraid of, I promise it's worse to live with regret. Her words stuck with him. The next day, Kai made a choice. By the time Renji entered the music room, the late afternoon sun was painting the grand piano in hues of orange and gold. And Kai was sitting at the keys. Renji froze. Kai didn't speak. He simply began to play. The melody was soft, haunting, a song with no words, yet full of everything he'd never been able to say. The rain. The warmth of a hand in his. The way his name sounded when Renji whispered it. The fear. The desire. The truth. By the time he finished, Renji was standing right beside him. "This song," Renji murmured, voice thick. "It's mine." Kai's fingers trembled slightly on the keys. Then, slowly, he turned to look at Renji. "Yes." Renji exhaled sharply, a mix of relief and something deeper. Then, before Kai could react, Renji cupped his face, tilting it slightly upward, and kissed him. Kai's breath hitched. The kiss was soft, slow, almost hesitant, as if Renji was giving him the chance to pull away. But Kai didn't. Instead, his hands curled into Renji's blazer, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, Renji's forehead rested against Kai's, his breath warm against his lips. "You're an idiot, you know that?" Renji whispered, grinning. Kai let out a quiet laugh. "Took you long enough to figure it out." Renji chuckled. "So, do I win?" Kai smirked, eyes dark with something new. "Not yet." Renji's laughter filled the music room. And this time, Kai didn't run. After the kiss, everything between Kai and Renji felt different. Their worlds, once separate, collided in a way that left them both uncertain. The tension was palpable. They were no longer just friends, they were something more, but neither knew how to navigate it. One afternoon, they stood side by side near the school lockers, and Kai, still reeling from the kiss, couldn't help but look at Renji. The way the sunlight caught his hair, the way his eyes seemed to gleam with unspoken words, it was all too much. Kai's heart pounded in his chest. "Renji, what does this mean for us?" Kai asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Renji hesitated, his gaze meeting Kai's for a moment before looking away, a faint flush on his cheeks. I don't know. But maybe we should figure it out, together." Kai's pulse quickened, his heart racing. In that moment, everything felt so fragile, so uncertain. But there was also something else, hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something deeper, something real. Days passed in a haze of uncertainty, but one moment stood out. It was late in the evening, and the two of them were walking along a quiet, deserted street. The stars above shone bright, but the air between them was heavy with anticipation. Neither of them said much, but their silence spoke volumes. Finally, Renji broke the silence, his voice low and almost hesitant. "Kai, do you ever wonder if we're not supposed to be this way? That maybe it's just, too much." Kai's heart ached at Renji's words. He could see the doubt in his eyes, but Kai knew, he knew it was real. He couldn't ignore what was happening between them. He reached out, his fingers brushing Renji's arm. Renji's body stiffened for a moment, but then his eyes softened. The moment stretched on, heavy with longing. Kai leaned in slowly, his heart pounding louder now than ever before. And then, without another word, they kissed. It was tentative at first, as if both were testing the waters. But when Kai felt Renji's hand gently cupping his face, pulling him closer, the kiss deepened. The world seemed to melt away, the streetlights flickering like distant stars, as if time had momentarily stopped. In that kiss, they didn't need to say anything. Everything was laid bare, the confusion, the yearning, the hesitation, the truth. It was raw, unfiltered, and the most real thing either of them had ever experienced. The kiss lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough. When they pulled apart, their breaths were ragged, and their eyes met. There was no turning back now. Renji began, but Kai silenced him with a gentle touch on his lips. "Let's just leave it for now," Kai whispered. "We'll figure this out, together." The days following the kiss weren't as easy as they'd hoped. They'd opened a door, but now they had to face what lay beyond it. Kai couldn't help but notice the subtle shift in the way people treated him. It wasn't overt, no one directly confronted him, but the whispers were impossible to ignore. Everywhere he went, he felt the weight of their stares, the lingering questions in the air. He wondered how much of it Renji was feeling, too. One afternoon, as they sat together, the tension was thick between them. Renji seemed distracted, his eyes far away. Kai couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "I can't ignore it anymore, Kai," Renji admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "The way people look at us. It's like we're some kind of experiment. Something to be judged." Kai's stomach twisted, but he refused to let the fear show. "I know. I feel it too. But, we'll be okay. We'll get through this." Renji's expression softened, but there was a weariness in his gaze. "I want to believe that, Kai. I really do." The growing tension between them came to a head one night, after a particularly difficult day. Kai had noticed the way Renji was pulling away, keeping his distance, as though trying to protect himself from something he couldn't quite explain. Finally, in the quiet of the evening, Kai knew he had to face it. He couldn't let the uncertainty linger any longer. When he arrived at Renji's house that night, he was prepared for a confrontation. He found Renji sitting on the porch, staring out into the darkness. Without a word, Kai sat next to him. They sat in silence for a long time, both of them too scared to speak, but too aware of the unspoken truth between them. Renji turned to him suddenly, his eyes filled with frustration. "What are we doing, Kai? This isn't easy. It's harder than I thought. I don't know if I can keep doing this, pretending everything's fine when it's not." Kai's heart clenched. He had felt the same way. "I don't want to pretend either," he said softly. "But I don't want to lose you, Renji." Renji's gaze softened, but his voice was raw. "You won't lose me, Kai. But I'm scared. I'm scared of everything changing." In that moment, Kai made a decision. He reached out and pulled Renji toward him, his lips meeting his once more, this time with a sense of urgency. There were no more questions, no more uncertainty. The kiss was an anchor, holding them both in the present, making everything else disappear. When they pulled away, Renji's face was flushed, his breath uneven. But there was something else there now, clarity. "Let's stop running from this, okay?" Kai whispered, his forehead resting against Renji's. "Let's face whatever comes together." Renji nodded, a small, genuine smile forming on his lips. Together. The kiss, while a moment of clarity, didn't immediately solve all of their problems. In fact, it introduced new ones. Kai could feel the change in himself. The uncertainty was still there, lingering in the background, but there was something else, too, a stronger, deeper connection to Renji. Yet, the weight of that connection felt like both a blessing and a curse. There was the constant fear of what would happen if things didn't work out, or if the world around them rejected their feelings. But there was also the undeniable truth that they had already crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. At school, things were different. Every interaction felt charged. The air seemed thick with tension, as if everyone was watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. Kai could see the side glances, the whispered comments, and the unsure expressions on their classmates' faces. And Renji seemed different too. His usual confident self had become more withdrawn, his eyes often avoiding Kai's gaze. It was clear that Renji was struggling with the pressures of their new reality. He was constantly trying to balance their private moments with the public persona he had to maintain. One day, as they sat together in the cafeteria, Renji broke the silence. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Kai, I think we need to talk about what this means. What this is." I can't keep pretending everything's normal when I'm not sure it is. Kai's heart tightened, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he reached across the table, placing a hand gently on Renji's. I don't know what this is either, Renji. But I know it's real. And maybe that's enough for now. Renji didn't say anything in response, but the weight in his eyes told Kai everything. He was conflicted, torn between wanting to be open with Kai and the fear of what it would cost them both. The days turned into weeks, and the pressure continued to mount. Kai felt as if he were suffocating under the weight of their unspoken fears. He loved Renji, of that he was certain, but there was so much more to navigate than just emotions. There was a sense of duty to family, to society, to themselves. There were the expectations of being normal, the pressures of fitting in, of not being judged. And then came the moment that threatened everything. It was a regular Thursday afternoon when Kai ran into one of Renji's friends, Yuto. Yuto was a charming, charismatic guy, and as always, his smile was infectious. But today, there was something off about him, something that made Kai uneasy. Hey, Kai, Yuto greeted, a knowing smile playing on his lips. I heard some things about you and Renji. What's going on? You guys are kind of the talk of the school now. Kai froze. He didn't want to hear this, didn't want to acknowledge it. But Yuto continued, leaning closer. You know, people are starting to talk about you too. Not everyone is as accepting as they'd like to think. You might want to be careful, Kai. Not everyone's going to be okay with whatever you two are doing. Kai's heart sank. He felt as though the ground beneath him was shifting, and he couldn't quite keep his footing. I'm not doing anything, Kai said, his voice tight with a mixture of frustration and fear. We're just figuring things out. Yuto raised an eyebrow but didn't push further. Sure. But be careful, okay? Kai nodded stiffly, but the words lingered in his mind long after Yuto had walked away. He was beginning to realize just how much they were up against. The world around them wasn't kind to what they had, and it terrified him. That night, Kai texted Renji, asking if they could meet up. When Renji arrived, he looked at Kai with a mixture of concern and curiosity. What's wrong, Kai? Renji asked, his voice soft. You seem off. Kai didn't hold back. I ran into Yuto today. He said some things that scared me. About people not being okay with us. About how people are talking. Renji's face tightened, his expression unreadable. I figured it wouldn't be long before people started saying things. I don't know if I can do this, Renji. I can't pretend everything's fine when it's not. It feels like we're living in two worlds, and I don't know how to bridge that gap. Renji stepped forward, taking Kai's hands in his. You don't have to do this alone. We're in this together, okay? We can face this. Kai looked into Renji's eyes, searching for any sign of doubt, but there was none. There was only unwavering trust. And suddenly, it was clear to Kai, they couldn't hide anymore. They would have to face the world, no matter how harsh it was. As Kai and Renji continued to navigate the turbulence of their feelings and the world's judgment, they found a new resolve. They realized that there was no way to make everyone happy, and they would have to face the consequences of their love head-on. It came to a head during the school's annual dance. The event was a big deal, and as the night approached, the air was charged with excitement. But for Kai and Renji, it was more than just a dance, it was a test. A test of whether they were strong enough to face the world as they were, without fear. Renji had asked Kai to be his date, and despite the anxiety swirling in his stomach, Kai said yes. The night of the dance arrived, and Kai could feel the eyes on them as soon as they entered the venue together. Whispers filled the air, and the tension was palpable. But this time, Kai didn't care. They walked hand in hand across the crowded room, their fingers intertwined, and though their hearts were racing, they were doing it together. As they reached the center of the dance floor, Renji turned to Kai, a smile tugging at his lips. We're doing this, Kai. Together. Kai nodded, and they swayed to the music, not caring about the stares, the whispers, or the judgments. They had come this far, and they weren't going to stop now. As the music played, Kai leaned in and kissed Renji, this time without hesitation. Their kiss, in that moment, was a declaration. It was a statement to the world, and most importantly, to themselves, that their love was real, and they weren't going to hide it anymore. The weeks following the dance were turbulent. Some people came around, some didn't. But through it all, Kai and Renji remained strong. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to face it together. Because sometimes, love was about being brave enough to embrace it, no matter the cost. And through it all, one thing became clear: they were no longer just surviving, they were thriving. Their journey wasn't just about love. It was about finding strength in each other and facing the world, no matter how uncertain or judgmental it may be. After the dance, everything changed. The once quiet whispers had turned into loud discussions, not only among their peers but also among family members and teachers. It felt like every step Kai and Renji took, the world was watching. But despite the external noise, the love between them had only grown stronger, more solid. It was no longer just about the two of them, it was about fighting for their right to be who they were, to love who they wanted to love, and to live without fear. The first big challenge came from Renji's parents. They were traditional and had always expected him to follow a clear path, good grades, a respectable career, a family with the perfect partner. Renji had always been the perfect son, the one who never caused trouble, who made everyone proud. But now, with Kai in his life, things were different. One Sunday evening, Renji's parents invited him over for dinner. Kai knew this could be a dangerous move, but Renji was determined to face the storm head-on. As they sat down to eat, Renji's father, Mr. Sato, was the first to speak. His voice was calm, but there was a sharpness in it. "Renji, there are things we need to discuss," he began. "You're a good student, a respectful young man. But I've been hearing rumors, and I need to know, what's this about you and that boy from school?" Renji's heart sank. He could feel the weight of his father's gaze on him, and he knew what was coming. He had always been the son who did things right. Now, his love for Kai was about to challenge everything his parents had envisioned for him. Before Renji could respond, his mother, Mrs. Sato, joined in. "We've been hearing things too. And we don't like them. It's not just about you anymore, Renji, it's about our reputation, our family name." Renji looked down, feeling the familiar tension rise in his chest. The walls around him felt like they were closing in. "I love Kai," Renji said quietly. "And I'm not going to hide it anymore. This is who I am. I need you to accept that." The room fell silent. Renji's parents exchanged a look, one that was filled with years of disappointment and fear for their son's future. Kai could feel the weight of their judgment, but Renji's resolve was unwavering. His father's voice cut through the silence. "You think this is just about you, Renji? You're wrong. You have a future to think about, a career to build. This doesn't fit into that." Kai could see Renji's fist clenching under the table. But Renji didn't back down. "I'm still your son. I will still make something of myself, with or without your approval. But I won't hide who I am for anyone." The tension in the room was thick. It was a fight neither of them had wanted, but it was one they knew was inevitable. Finally, Renji's mother spoke, her voice softer now. "I don't understand this. I don't know how you can be sure about this boy. But Renji, if this makes you happy, then we'll try. We'll give you some time." It wasn't an outright acceptance, but it was the first step. And for that, Renji was grateful. It was a small victory, but it was enough. While Renji faced his family's opposition, Kai's battle was more internal. He had always struggled with his own sense of identity. He had grown up in a culture that placed heavy emphasis on expectations, on doing things by the book, and on being normal. His love for Rinji was anything but normal in their eyes. It was dangerous, messy, and, according to some, wrong. At school, the whispers didn't stop. In fact, they grew louder. People began to avoid Kai, and some even outright mocked him. He was called names, laughed at, and excluded from group activities. No one wanted to be associated with someone like him. The isolation felt suffocating. And the worst part was, it wasn't just the students who rejected him, it was the teachers too. Kai could feel their judgment every time he walked into a classroom. One afternoon, after a particularly harsh incident with a group of classmates, Kai sat alone on the school steps, his head in his hands. The words of his peers echoed in his mind, each insult more painful than the last. He could feel the world closing in on him. It wasn't just about loving Rinji anymore, it was about being true to himself in a world that didn't understand. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out, seeing a message from Rinji. "Meet me at the old bridge after school. I need you." Kai didn't hesitate. He grabbed his bag, wiped away the tears, and ran. When Kai arrived at the bridge, Rinji was already there, his back to him, looking out over the water. Rinji's shoulders were tense, and his usual calm demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Kai stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Rinji." Rinji turned around, his eyes meeting Kai's. There was pain there, pain that mirrored Kai's own. Without a word, Rinji pulled him into an embrace, holding him tightly as if he was the only thing keeping him grounded. "I'm sorry, Kai," Rinji said, his voice strained. "I didn't know it would be like this. I didn't think it would hurt you this much." Kai shook his head, pulling back slightly to look into Rinji's eyes. "No. I'm sorry. I've been so afraid of everything, of what people think, of losing you, of being alone. But you're right. We can't hide. We can't pretend this isn't real." Rinji cupped Kai's face gently, his thumb brushing away the tears that had started to fall again. "We'll fight for this. For us. No matter what happens." For the first time in weeks, Kai felt a sense of peace wash over him. He wasn't alone anymore. Rinji was with him, and together, they could face whatever the world threw at them. "I'm not going to run from this anymore," Kai said, his voice firm. "I love you, Rinji. And I'm going to keep fighting for us." Rinji smiled, and they stood there for a moment, the world around them fading into the background. In that moment, there was only the two of them, together, facing the unknown, but certain in their love. The beginning of a new chapter. In the weeks that followed, Rinji and Kai continued to face challenges, but they faced them together. The whispers died down gradually as their peers saw their unwavering commitment to each other. Even though the road ahead was still uncertain, Kai and Rinji had found something stronger than fear, each other. Their love, once a secret and a source of shame, became their greatest strength. It wasn't about fitting into the mold society had made for them, it was about creating their own path, together. And though the battle was far from over, Kai knew that as long as he had Rinji by his side, nothing could break them. Despite the breakthrough in Rinji's family and the quiet acceptance of their love, there were still significant hurdles ahead. The real test would come when Rinji's school announced the annual student leadership election, a highly prestigious role that everyone aspired to. Rinji had always been a candidate for the role, and this year, his teachers were especially pushing him as the ideal person for the position. But this year, the expectations were different. It wasn't just about grades, respect, and involvement in school activities. The student body wanted someone who could represent them, someone who embodied what they believed in. And some students felt that Rinji, with his relationship with Kai, didn't fit that mold. The whispers, once subtle, were now open. Rinji was getting judged not just for his grades or his leadership qualities, but for who he loved. As the election drew closer, Kai could feel the weight of Rinji's internal struggle. Rinji had always been the perfect student, respected by teachers, adored by peers. But now, everything was being questioned, his character dissected in front of everyone. One afternoon, as Kai met Renji at their usual spot by the school gardens, he noticed how exhausted Renji looked. His eyes were heavy, and his shoulders slumped in a way that made Kai's heart ache. "I can't do this anymore," Renji muttered, his voice tinged with frustration. "The election, the pressure. It's all just too much. I don't know if I can be what everyone wants me to be anymore." Kai stepped closer, taking Renji's hands in his. "Renji, you don't have to be what they want. You just need to be who you are. That's what's most important." Renji looked at him, his expression softening, but the conflict in his eyes remained. "It's not just about me, Kai. I've always been the golden child. But now I feel like I'm losing everything I've worked for, everything my parents expect. If I don't win this election, I don't know what's going to happen." Kai squeezed his hands gently. "You can't control how others see you. But I know you. You've always been strong, always been someone who stands up for what's right. Even now, you're still that person. Whether you win or lose, nothing changes how I feel about you." Renji took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "I just don't want to disappoint you." "You could never disappoint me, Renji. You're enough just as you are," Kai reassured him. As they stood there, the world seemed to fade away. Kai's words wrapped around Renji like a blanket, warming him against the chill of fear and doubt. With Kai by his side, Renji knew he could face whatever was coming. The day of the election arrived, and Renji's nerves were on edge. It wasn't just about winning, it was about proving to everyone that he could make his own choices. That love was more important than societal norms. During the election speech, Renji stood in front of his peers, his hands gripping the podium tightly. He had prepared for this moment, but as he looked out at the sea of faces, the weight of their expectations hit him. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know many of you have been expecting a speech about how I'm going to lead the school, how I'm going to make everything perfect for us. And I want to do that, truly. But today, I want to say something different." The room was quiet, every student leaning in to hear what Renji would say next. "I'm not perfect. I'm not who you think I should be. I've made mistakes. I've hurt people. But the one thing I will never apologize for is loving who I love. And I love Kai. With everything I have. And if that's not enough for you, then I don't deserve to be your leader." There was a moment of stunned silence, but then, to Renji's surprise, a few students started to clap. Then more joined in. It wasn't everyone, but it was enough. Renji's words had cut through the facade of perfection, and in their place, the truth had come out. His courage to be vulnerable, to choose love over societal norms, had made all the difference. Kai, who had been standing quietly in the back of the room, watched Renji with pride swelling in his chest. He had always known Renji was special, but now, he was seeing the depths of his bravery. After the election speech, the rest of the day was a whirlwind. Renji had poured his heart into his speech, and the reaction was mixed. Some students were supportive, while others were vocal in their disapproval. The tension was palpable. When the results were finally announced, Renji didn't win. But the loss didn't sting like Kai thought it would. There was no bitterness in Renji's eyes, no defeat in his posture. Instead, Renji looked at Kai, his expression peaceful, content. "We didn't lose, Kai. We won something bigger. I spoke my truth, and I feel free." Kai smiled, taking Renji's hand. "You're right. And that's more than enough for me." The fallout from the election didn't last long. Over time, students began to see Renji for who he truly was, strong, capable, and unapologetically himself. The whispers died down, and while the road wasn't always smooth, Renji's courage had started to change people's perspectives. As the year drew to a close, Renji and Kai found themselves growing even closer. They spent their days together, working through school, facing life's challenges, and enjoying the little moments of peace they found in each other. Kai's family, though hesitant at first, began to accept Renji, seeing how much their son had changed for the better. And as for Renji's parents, they slowly came to understand. It wasn't immediate and it wasn't easy, but over time, they learned that their son's happiness came first. One evening, as Renji and Kai sat under the stars on a rooftop, Renji turned to Kai with a soft smile. "You know, I never thought I'd be here, doing this, living like this," Renji said quietly, his fingers intertwined with Kai's. "But I'm glad I'm with you." Kai leaned his head on Renji's shoulder. "Me too, Renji. Every moment with you has been worth it." They sat there in comfortable silence, knowing that no matter what life threw their way, they would face it together, as partners, as equals, and as people who had found their own path in a world that tried to make them fit a mold they didn't belong in. The summer festival was fast approaching, and the entire school was buzzing with excitement. It was the one event where the whole academy gathered to celebrate, with performances, games, and food stalls lining the grounds, transforming Hoshikawa Academy into a vibrant festival site. Students rehearsed dances, set up stalls, and practiced their songs and performances for the big day. The atmosphere was electric, and it seemed as though everyone had something to look forward to, except for Kai Minace. Kai's heart felt heavier than ever, as though it had been encased in lead. The past few weeks had been filled with long silences and uncomfortable distance between him and Renji. Ever since the misunderstanding with Mayu Tanaka. The affectionate gestures, the smiles, the subtle touches that once made Kai's pulse race, had become few and far between. Renji had noticed the withdrawal, but he wasn't one to easily back down. He had tried to reach out, but each time, Kai had pulled away. The tension between them had grown like a thick fog, surrounding everything they once had. The music room, once their quiet sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield. Kai would sneak in, but his eyes would always dart to the door, afraid that Renji would walk in with that infectious smile and pull him back into the chaos. He couldn't let that happen. Not after everything that had happened. The day of the festival arrived. The school grounds were transformed. There were string lights twinkling between trees, the sound of laughter and music filling the air, and a gentle breeze that carried the smell of sweet treats and fried snacks. Students in their summer uniforms moved about in cheerful clusters, some dressed in yukatas for the special occasion, their voices rising above the noise in bursts of excitement. Kai walked alone through the festival. His thoughts felt like a storm in his mind, turbulent, impossible to navigate. His sister, now, had been pestering him to enjoy the festival, but he wasn't sure how to. His eyes searched for Renji, but there was no sign of him. It seemed as if Renji was avoiding him just as much as he was avoiding Renji. As the night fell and the lights shimmered above, Kai found himself standing near the edge of the festival grounds, by the park's small pond that was partially hidden by willow trees. The sound of the water gently lapping against the stones was calming, but it did nothing to ease the tension in his chest. The flickering lanterns reflected off the water's surface, casting a soft glow around him. That's when he heard the voice. "Are you just going to stand there all night?" Kai's heart skipped a beat. He turned around to see Renji, wearing a dark blue yukata, the colors almost matching the night sky, with his hair slightly tousled. His eyes locked onto Kai's, filled with an intensity that Kai hadn't seen in a while. "Renji," Kai whispered, his voice barely above a breath. Renji took a few steps forward, his gaze never leaving Kai. "You've been avoiding me," he said, his voice quiet but firm, a mixture of frustration and something softer beneath it. "I'm not sure if you're scared or just angry, but I'm tired of pretending nothing is wrong." Kai swallowed, trying to find his voice, but the words felt choked in his throat. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. I'm not sure if I can." Renji stepped closer, the distance between them closing with each word. "You don't need to fix anything, Kai. I don't want perfection. I just want you." Kai's breath caught in his throat. Renji's words were like a balm to his soul, but at the same time, they scared him. He didn't know if he could be that vulnerable again. The last time he had allowed himself to fall, it had hurt so much. You think you can just say that? Kai asked, his voice trembling now. After everything? After you're with her, after all the things I saw. How am I supposed to just, forget that? Renji reached out, gently cupping Kai's cheek. His touch was warm, grounding. I'm not with her, Kai. I never was. I was just trying to get you to notice me. I've been in love with you since the moment I first heard you play that piano. I just didn't know how to tell you. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. And then, Kai did something he hadn't allowed himself to do in a long time. He let go. His hands moved before he could stop them, reaching for Renji's yukata and pulling him close. The world seemed to still, the sounds of the festival fading into the background as his heart pounded in his chest. Kai's lips found Renji's in a kiss that was desperate, full of longing, and so many emotions that Kai couldn't even name. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as though neither of them wanted to risk breaking the fragile moment. But then Renji deepened it, his hands cupping Kai's face, pulling him closer, their bodies melding together as if they had always belonged that way. For the first time, Kai felt something other than fear, something warm and comforting in the way Renji kissed him. They broke apart only when the air between them became too charged to ignore. Kai's heart was racing, and for the first time in weeks, he felt like he could breathe. Renji's forehead rested against his, their breaths coming in shallow gasps. I'm sorry, Renji whispered, his voice hoarse. I should have been honest with you. But I didn't know how to make you understand. Kai closed his eyes, trying to steady himself. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time, he didn't care. They were together. The rest of the world could wait. As the festival continued around them, Kai and Renji walked side by side, their hands brushing occasionally, like they were still testing the waters. They didn't need to speak much. The silence between them now felt comfortable, no longer suffocating. The following days were full of the kind of small, intimate moments that Kai had once only dreamed about. They sat together in the music room, sharing moments of quiet as they played, their fingers brushing over the piano keys as if they were creating their own melody. Renji didn't shy away anymore. He was always there, supportive and patient, even when Kai doubted himself. Kai had learned to open up again, to trust that Renji wouldn't leave him. They still faced challenges, there would always be people who doubted them, who didn't understand their connection, but Kai didn't care anymore. They were stronger together. By the time the school year ended, Kai had not only gained the courage to express his love for Renji, but he had also rediscovered a part of himself he had long forgotten, the passionate. The passionate musician inside him, the one who could pour his soul into the piano, the one who no longer had to hide behind walls of fear. At the school's end-of-year concert, Kai performed a piece he had composed himself, a melody that told the story of his journey. As the final note rang out, his eyes found Renji in the audience, his heart full of a love that would carry them both into the future. The rest of the world might have been uncertain, but Kai and Renji knew one thing for sure, they had found each other. And that was enough. The days after the festival had been a blur of new beginnings for Kai and Renji. Their bond, once fragile and tentative, was now stronger than ever. The long-awaited summer vacation was in full swing, and although it was a time for rest, for Kai, it was also a time of deep reflection. Every day felt like a gift. They spent their time together, visiting local cafes, taking walks in the park, and even catching a few movies at the cinema. But it wasn't just about the external experiences. It was about the internal changes that were happening within Kai. His once buried passion for music was coming to life again. He was playing the piano more, composing new pieces, and finally allowing himself to dream about his future without fear. Still, there was a quiet weight on his shoulders. Summer was slipping away, and soon, the new school year would begin. While he felt content, he also felt a twinge of uncertainty. The world outside Hoshikawa Academy still seemed so vast, filled with challenges, expectations, and the pressure of what others thought. How would they survive in the world beyond the school gates, especially once graduation came closer? Would their love survive when faced with real-world complications? One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to pepper the sky, Kai and Renji sat on the roof of the school, their legs dangling over the edge, a quiet moment to themselves after a long day. "I've been thinking," Renji started, his voice calm, but Kai could hear the weight behind it. "When school ends, what's next for us?" Kai turned to him, his heart skipping a beat at the serious tone in Renji's voice. "What do you mean?" he asked softly. Renji took a deep breath, his gaze shifting to the distant city lights. "I mean, when we leave here, what do we do? I don't want us to just go our separate ways like it's nothing. I don't want to lose you, Kai." Kai's chest tightened at the vulnerability in Renji's voice. He had been wondering the same thing. The world outside felt like a big, daunting place, and the thought of it without Renji by his side terrified him. "I don't want to lose you either," Kai whispered. "But the future, it's so uncertain. We've been so caught up in the now, in what's been happening between us, that I don't know how to see past it. I'm afraid, Renji." Renji turned toward him, his hand gently brushing against Kai's, offering warmth and reassurance. "I get it. I'm scared too. But we can face it together. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I want you in it. I want to support you in your music, whatever path you take, and I want you to support me too, as I figure out what I'm doing with my life. We don't have to have all the answers right now. We just need to take that first step." Kai felt his heart swell, his throat tight with emotion. "I want that too," he replied. "I don't want to go through life feeling alone. I want to build something with you." Renji smiled, a look of tenderness in his eyes that made Kai's heart flutter. "Then we'll build it. Together." And in that moment, it felt like the weight on Kai's shoulders lifted. Maybe they didn't have all the answers yet, but they had each other. And that was enough to start. The following weeks went by in a blur, but there was a new energy between Kai and Renji. They talked more openly about their future, what kind of music Kai wanted to pursue, the schools and programs he was considering, and what Renji was passionate about as well. There was a shared sense of determination, as though they had realized they were both capable of achieving their dreams, as long as they were together. But life had a way of challenging their resolve. One afternoon, Kai received a letter that would alter the course of his plans. It was an acceptance letter from Tokyo National University of the Arts, one of the most prestigious music schools in Japan. His heart raced as he read the letter. It was everything he had ever wanted, but it also came with an ultimatum: he would have to leave Hoshikawa Academy to pursue his dreams, starting with the next school year. The letter felt like a dream, but as soon as Kai read the last sentence, reality set in. He would have to leave everything behind. His friends, his family, and Renji. The news came as a shock to Renji. At first, he didn't know how to react. He wanted to be happy for Kai, wanted to support him in this opportunity, but the thought of losing him, even temporarily, was almost unbearable. Kai had made it clear that he didn't want to leave Renji behind, but he had always known that pursuing his passion for music would mean sacrifices. The night before Kai's departure, Renji met him at the spot where they had shared so many of their special moments, by the small pond near the school. The stars overhead twinkled softly, as though the universe itself was watching over them. Renji's voice was quiet, full of raw emotion. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted, his hands trembling as he held on to Kai's. "I want you to go. I want you to chase your dreams. But I don't know if I'm strong enough to let you go." Kai smiled gently, his thumb brushing over Renji's hand. "You don't have to be strong enough, Renji. We're stronger together. And this isn't the end of us. It's just the beginning of something new." Renji's heart clenched. "Promise me you'll come back. Promise me we'll keep building our future. Future together." Kai cupped Renji's face, his heart aching. "I promise. No matter how far apart we are, you'll always have a place in my heart. With one final kiss, deep and full of longing, they sealed their promises. And though the future remained uncertain, they knew that they would always find their way back to each other, no matter the distance. Months passed, and Kai thrived at the music academy. He composed new pieces, learned from the best, and made new friends who shared his passion for music. Though he was excelling in his own right, there was still a part of him that ached for Rinji. And then, one day, just as Kai was preparing for his final recital, he received a familiar message. It was from Rinji. "I've been waiting for you to come back," it said. "And now, I think it's time for us to create something new together. You and me." Kai smiled through his tears, his heart racing with excitement. He had missed Rinji, more than words could say. He knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. As Kai performed the final piece of his recital, he thought about how far they had both come. And when he closed his eyes, he imagined Rinji sitting in the front row, waiting for him to return home. It wasn't about finding the perfect moment or having everything figured out. It was about choosing each other, every single day, no matter where the journey took them. And that was the most beautiful promise of all. It had been nearly a year since Kai left Hoshikawa Academy to chase his dreams. In that time, the bond between him and Rinji had never wavered, though it had been tested in ways neither of them could have predicted. Kai's journey at the Tokyo National University of the Arts had been everything he had hoped for. He had flourished as a composer, winning awards and performing pieces that left a mark on the music community. Yet, the absence of Rinji, his constant source of strength, had made each achievement feel bittersweet. Every success was colored with the longing to share it with the one person who had always believed in him, even when he doubted himself. Rinji, too, had grown in his own way. He had taken on more responsibilities at the cafe, learning not only how to run the business but also how to manage people and resources. He had a new sense of purpose, and even though Kai was far away, Rinji had found his own rhythm, one that was no longer defined by the space Kai left behind but by the future they had promised to build together. It was on a quiet spring day, the anniversary of their last meeting, that Kai finally made the decision. After months of composing and preparing for his upcoming recital, Kai knew what he had to do next. He boarded a train from Tokyo back to Hoshikawa, his heart racing as the train clattered over the tracks. He couldn't wait any longer. He had learned to embrace the distance between them, but the ache in his chest had become unbearable. He needed to see Rinji again, to hold him, to show him. To show him that no matter the miles or the years, their love was strong enough to withstand anything. When he arrived at the familiar town of Hoshikawa, the air felt different. Everything about the town reminded him of the time he spent here with Rinji, the sweet smell of fresh coffee brewing at the cafe, the sound of wind chimes ringing gently from the trees. And there, standing in front of the cafe, was Rinji. Rinji's eyes widened in surprise when he saw Kai. His face lit up, but before he could speak, Kai stepped forward quickly, closing the distance between them. He didn't wait for words, he cupped Rinji's face gently and pulled him in for a kiss. It was a kiss full of emotion, a mix of relief, love, and longing all wrapped into one. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, as if testing the waters after so much time apart. Then, as if the world around them had fallen away, the kiss deepened, full of unspoken promises. Rinji's hands found their way to Kai's neck, pulling him closer as the kiss grew more urgent, more desperate. Kai felt the warmth of Rinji's body against his, and for the first time in a long while, he felt complete. He pulled back slightly, breathless, his forehead resting against Rinji's. "I'm home now," Kai whispered. Rinji smiled through his tears. "I thought I lost you." Kai shook his head, his thumb brushing away the tears that had fallen from Rinji's eyes. "I'll never leave you again." After weeks of settling back into life together, things started to fall into place. Kai decided to return to Hoshikawa permanently. He had received an offer to compose music for a major film, but more than that, he wanted to be by Rinji's side. The idea of being apart again was unbearable. Renji, too, was changing. His cafe had blossomed, and he had learned how to manage everything with a new confidence. But the best part of all was the warmth he felt every time Kai came home after a long day of composing. They spent their evenings walking through the city, sharing stories and dreams for the future. Sometimes, they would stop in the park, sitting under the stars. One evening, as they sat close on a bench, the air crisp with the scent of autumn, Kai turned to Renji, his eyes reflecting a deep intensity. "Renji, I've been thinking. We've been through so much to get here, and I want to make sure I never take this moment for granted." Renji raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" Kai took a deep breath. "I think I want to build a future with you. A real one. Together." He leaned in, brushing his lips against Renji's, a soft, gentle kiss that held all the sincerity of his words. Renji's heart skipped a beat. He kissed Kai back, this time with more passion, as if the very act of kissing Kai again could erase all the time they'd spent apart. When they pulled away, Renji whispered, "I want that too. I've always wanted that." As the months passed, Kai and Renji began making plans for the future. They decided to combine their passions and open a small music cafe, where Kai would perform and compose live while Renji ran the cafe side. It was a dream they had talked about for years, but now it felt real. They worked side by side, and every night as they closed the cafe, they would find themselves in each other's arms. One particular night, as they were cleaning up the cafe, Kai pulled Renji to the back room. The air was heavy with the smell of coffee, and the soft light from the kitchen glowed warmly. "Renji," Kai said, "I can't tell you how happy I am that you're in my life." Renji smiled, his heart beating a little faster as he took a step toward Kai. "I feel the same way." Without warning, Kai leaned in and kissed Renji deeply. This kiss was different from any other. It was full of yearning and promise, as if they were sealing their future with this one kiss. Kai's hands gripped Renji's waist as their bodies pressed together. When they finally broke apart, their breaths were heavy, but they both wore smiles. "I'm not going anywhere," Kai whispered. Renji nodded, his hands threading through Kai's hair. "Neither am I." As time passed, their love only deepened. Kai and Renji traveled, composed music, and built their cafe into a thriving local business. They created beautiful art, both together and separately, and their love continued to shine through everything they did. One evening, after a particularly successful music performance at their cafe, Kai took Renji's hand and led him outside. The night sky stretched out before them, stars twinkling above. "Kai, what's next for us?" Renji asked, his voice full of excitement. Kai turned to him, a soft smile on his lips. "I think we've only just begun. But no matter what we do next, I know I'll be with you. Forever." And as if the universe itself had granted them permission, they shared one last kiss under the stars, this one full of hope, a kiss that promised that no matter where life would they would always find their way back to each other. The end.